Good day. It's May 3rd, 2022, and this is the view from SaddleBrooke, Arizona. SaddleBrooke is the premier retirement community in the United States of America, and I live here, and it's fantastic. And you should think about moving here too if you're ready to retire. In any case, the view from SaddleBrooke today is abortion is on the agenda. If you have been paying attention to the news, you'll see that the Supreme Court, after 50 years, has decided to send the decision on abortion regulation back to the states. And for a little background, that's where it was. 50 years ago, when Roe was decided, several states, New York and California in particular, had already pretty much legalized abortion. And then the Supreme Court decided to reach down and grab a case, Roe v. Wade, and to decide it so there would be a nationwide standard. And the court doing that is what caused most of the firestorm and why this issue stayed alive for the last 50 years, besides the fact a lot of people do not think abortion should be legal, but it was the way it was decided, which was to reach down and grab a case and then to make up the right to privacy, which really doesn't exist in the Constitution per se. So it caused all this controversy and got people elected and got people defeated, and here we are today. So now what will happen is here, for instance, in Arizona, the state legislature will have the power, depending on the next election, which happens this fall, on how restrictive abortion rights should be. Right now, the current law in place is 15 weeks or less, abortion is still legal. And the legislature in Arizona is split by one vote, so in each the Senate and the House. So depending on how the legislative elections come out and who the new governor will be, that law could change. So everybody's going to be very invested in the legislative races here in Arizona and other states, because there are states that have passed some very restrictive rules on abortion. I'm pro-life. I think it was wrongly decided, and I think today with the availability of the contraceptives, particularly the morning after pill, which if there is a rape or an incest, that a woman can go get a pill and have a chemical abortion in the day after, or actually there won't be any fertilization taking place, as I understand it. And that is readily available to everybody. And so things have changed, technology has changed, the science has changed, where people can actually see that at 15 weeks, it looks like a baby's ready to be born. So people have said, well, maybe this isn't the wrong thing. Maybe it's not right to wait till the third trimester or the second trimester, or whatever the restriction happens to be in your particular area. In any case, this is still not going to be an issue that's going to go away. It's not going to be settled for quite some time. And so that's the view from SaddleBrooke, which is all retirees, is probably not too invested in this issue, although a lot of the women who live here probably went through this change of the abortion law, and when 73, when the thing changed, and the whole dynamic of sexuality and sexual relations changed because of it. It left a lot of guys off the hook, let's put it that way. If they had a one-night stand and it turned out that the woman got pregnant, mentally a guy could say, well, I'll pay for your abortion so you don't have to worry about it. And that's exactly what happened in a lot of cases. But the rate of abortion has been coming down, but currently it's still running about 900,000 abortions a year. Think about that. In 2 years, we had 900,000 deaths from COVID, but every year there's about 900,000 abortions performed just in the United States of America. So it's a big number, and it's certainly the issue is going to be around for a while, and we will see how it plays out. The inflation rate and the election is going to play heavily on Joe Biden's and the Democratic Party. they might think that this is going to rally their base, the abortion decision. And to some extent it will, but most of the um, pro-abortion people already were in the Democratic Party, so they're not going to change. And people in the middle think abortion, most of them should be legal but regulated, which is what's going to happen um, in practicality. Now, how the different parties will frame the issue, I'm sure the Democrats in Arizona are going to say this will end abortion completely and it'll be a terrible thing, and they'll be back all the abortions and all that. But really, what really matters to people is going to the car or going to the gas station and filling up their car with gas. Where a year ago it might have been $50, $60, now you're talking $120, $130, and for people in business it's worse, and they got to raise their prices. And inflation drives everything, especially energy, because food has to be delivered to the store, and that takes energy, and production of food, and so food prices have to go up. And everything else that's delivered to a store, it's physical goods, are all impacted by the cost of energy. And the Biden people made a huge miscalculation. The symbolic shutting down of the pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline, looked good, actually had no real effect on prices, because the oil that was going to be shipped in the pipeline is still coming across in train cars on train tracks and the big tanker cars. Interesting enough, the trains are owned by Warren Buffett, and he was one of those who wanted to stop the Keystone Pipeline project, and that's why he supported doing that, because he would have lost money. He's not, Warren might be the sage of Omaha, but he's a smart investor and he knows how to play his politics. But inflation will drive the election mainly, even though people say, well, the economy is great. We have a lot of people working. We have all this low unemployment. We have people, we have more jobs than people are willing to apply for them. That's all true. But if you're an hourly worker working on a wage basis, you have lost your purchasing power. If you were paid $40,000 a year, for instance, with 7% inflation, that's a $2,800 cut in your purchasing power. So you can get a cost of living adjustment, which might put you just even again, but still, you're going to be you're still not getting a real raise in your income. And the other thing that inflation creates is inflationary anticipation. So people start buying more ahead of time, and that drives up the price. And there's what they call the wage price spiral, where the prices go up and then the wages go up, try to meet the two, so that people's standard of living stays the same. I lived through this under Jimmy Carter in the early and late 70s. First Gerald Ford and then Jimmy Carter, and Carter made it much worse. And it was tough because inflation was in double digits, and they had to raise interest rates to prime interest rate for one point was 21%. It was crazy, and real estate went to a dead stop, and business went to a dead stop, because you have to finance things in order to run a business. You can't run all cash on a cash. So we don't want to go back to that, and the problem is the Federal Reserve has for too long pumped money in terms of keeping interest rates low, and also buying up government bonds, which creates more money supply. So we've pumped like $6 trillion into the economy on the budget side of the equation, which Congress has spent with all the COVID relief and all those different bills. And Trump was part of it. When COVID hit, he was more than willing to spend a couple $1 trillion to try to save his presidency, and everybody went along with that. And then we had the infrastructure bill, which Biden passed early in his term, and another COVID relief bill, which he passed. So we're awash in money, which means it's worth less, and so you have inflation. It's real simple. Only government can create general price level inflation, and that's what's happened. So the cost of houses here in SaddleBrooke and everywhere else in Arizona have gone up dramatically. The cost of rent for people has gone up dramatically, especially in the metropolitan areas of the country. And so this has this ratcheting effect where it's going to just keep going up, and who knows where it'll end up. If it goes too far, they'll have to go to really high interest rates, and we'll have to have a severe recession which will slow down the rate of inflation, but again hurts everybody because of a recession. Who gets laid off? The people at the lower end of the economic scale. SaddleBrooke has its own problems, and you're probably in your city. We can't get folks here to work in the restaurants. So right now in HOA 1, our restaurants are closed on the weekend because we can't get coverage for cooks and servers and that sort of work. I have read reliably that 2.5 million people have left the workforce in terms of in the food service sector. 2.5 million people have just said, I did it, I'm not going back because I don't want to lose my job if there's a future pandemic and the government decides to shut us down. Which we all look back now and say that was a huge mistake. The shutting down of all the social activities and the restaurants didn't do anything as far as stopping the pandemic, but it did put didn't do anything positive for the pandemic, but it did a lot of harm to the workers and the businesses especially. A lot of businesses had to close their doors because they didn't have revenue, even with the government sending them subsidy checks. So that's how we're affected here, and I'm sure where you live, you have the same problem. Is the restaurants are open sporadically or just restricted hours. So you wonder how these folks are going to survive. I don't know. But getting back to normal may never happen again. So the election in Arizona has a very crucial election. Is the Senate race with Mark Kelly, and he's running against one of 3 competitors. The most well-funded and probably the best profile is a guy named Jim Lehman, who was a military guy, played football at Alabama, started his own energy business, building power plants and solar plants and so on. Self-made millionaire, and he wants to be a senator now. And he's probably leading the pack. His competitors are the current Attorney General, a guy named Mark Brnovich, who's a terrible candidate. He just doesn't look like a senator, and he was an okay Attorney General, but the conservatives here in Arizona don't like him because they don't think he did enough on election fraud, which would have been sort of under his jurisdiction. And he probably he's the only one that's within striking distance. He and Lehman are pretty close. And then there's this third guy who's very interesting by the name of Blake Masters, who's in his early 30s. And he's one of the new breed of Silicon Valley tech millionaires who worked with Peter Thiel on a thing called PayPal. You may have used PayPal, and he was around, and I don't know if he's a founder or whatever, but he's got Peter Thiel's backing. And so Lehman's got Rick Grinnell talking to Trump. Masters has Peter Thiel talking to Trump. Brnovich is on the outside of Trump. Brnovich will never get endorsed by Trump. So it really comes down to Lehman or Masters getting Trump's nod. And interesting enough, today we're going to find out if Trump's endorsement is worth anything, because there's a primary in Ohio. And a guy named J.D. Vance, who wrote a pretty good book called The Hillbilly Elegy, and then there was a movie made about it, which talks about how the hollowing out of America for lower blue-collar class, working class folks being affected by drugs and the lack of manufacturing jobs and the mining jobs that were taken away. And Vance escaped all that. He got to Harvard, I believe Harvard Law. Then he wrote his book, and now he's running for Senate in Ohio. And he was third in the race until about 2-3 weeks ago. And then he got endorsed by Trump, and boom, he jumps to the top of the polling and got all kinds of money coming in from all over the country. His opponent's a guy named Josh Mandel, who's a solid guy, solid conservative, has been the state treasurer in Ohio, and is backed by people like Mark Levin and the other more conservative talk show hosts and so forth. Seems like Tucker Carlson has J.D. Vance on all the time, so he's obviously favoring him because he books him all the time. So it'll be a really interesting day to find out. Well, tomorrow we'll find out if Trump has the imprimatur and can drive a candidate over the finish line, and then if he comes into Arizona and endorses one of the 2 leading candidates. And then we'll have the fall elections, and we'll see if the balance of the Senate will shift. It's pretty much written in stone and conventional wisdom that the House is going to flip to Republicans, which means the district we're in here in SaddleBrooke, which is Congressional 6, has a couple players, Juan Ciscomani and a gal named Kathleen Wynne. And Ciscomani is backed by the Republican establishment, a guy, he worked for Doug Ducey, who's the current governor, and who's Trump doesn't like. But Ciscomani he's good looking, he's got the family, and charismatic, and will probably win the primary, but we'll see. Right now he doesn't have Trump's endorsement either, so we'll wait and see what happens there. And then the other race that'll be very interesting is Mark Kelly, I'm sorry, not Mark Kelly, that's the Senate race, will be in CD2 now, which is Tom O'Halloran, who's been in the seat since 2014 or 16, I think, when he beat our county sheriff, Paul Baview. And he'll be running against, who knows, there's 3 or 4 candidates. The one who gets the most attention is a guy named Eli Crane, who's a former military, I think a Navy SEAL. And he looks the part, and he's got the whole thing going for him as far as that goes, but no political experience either. So, and then there's a guy named Mark DeLuzio, who's a businessman and done a lot of stuff, international business, self-funding his race. And then there's Walt Blackman, who's a current state legislator, and not a hardcore conservative, but he's been working with the conservatives in the state ledge, and so he's got his hat in the race. So it's going to be an interesting race to see who takes on O'Halloran in CD2. So all those things are going on, plus the state legislative races here in SaddleBrooke and across the country, because this is the year that statewide races are held. So that's what's going on. That's the view from SaddleBrooke from me today. Pinal County, as far as that's concerned, going very well. Development going crazy. So many houses, so many businesses pouring in here, and as long as the money's cheap, prosperity is probably going to just keep right on rolling. And we'll check back with you very soon. Thanks for listening.